All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. To those of you who have trickled in a little bit more recently, I think we're about ready to get going. So thank you so much for making time to be here. It's really great to see some familiar names, some new faces. We just, I'm constantly amazed that, teachers in this short amount of time that you have as break and getting ready for the school year with childcare challenges and everything that's going on, still make time to attend professional development, stuff like this. And we really do not take it for granted. And we're really grateful to see you here. So today is the second day of our Summer Law Institute webinar series, which we launched yesterday with a session on issues facing young workers in the workplace. And what we're going to be talking about today is how OJEN helps make teaching law a breeze. Of course, teaching law is still pretty challenging, but this is going to be an overview of all of the services that we offer for teachers, all of the resources that we have out there, everything that we can do to help make your law class as good and engaging and well-informed as it can possibly be. And we're really thrilled to be joined today by one of our OJEN board members and a longtime teacher, Louis Philippe. If I can just introduce and embarrass him for a second, Louis has been a teacher with the TDSB for 13 years, currently serving as the department head of social science at Bloor Collegiate Institute. He's taught Canadian and international law for the last 4 years. He's also a digital lead learner mentor for the TDSB and has been president of the Toronto History, Humanities, and Social Science Subject Council for the last 4 years, supporting teachers through workshops and other PD opportunities. Just a couple of things going on. He is passionate about legal education and providing students with authentic, engaging learning experiences that challenge them to wrestle with fundamental questions of law and justice, which is exactly the kind of thing that we love to do here as well. So Louis, thank you so much for making the time to be here as well. We're hoping that we can go through, sort of a lot of what OJEN offers. And Louis, if I'm not mistaken, you've used a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. Is that correct?
I have, yeah, both in class and part of our law club extracurricularly.
Perfect. So yeah, we're going to throw to you for some practical insights on how to use these tools in class. Just as a matter of housekeeping, this is in a webinar format. So by default, everyone's cameras and microphones are off. So, we're not going to see the person walking through your background in their underwear. If you have any questions or comments, which please send them along to us. You can either use the Q&A function if there are questions that you would like us to address on the air, or you can post them in chat if there's something that you would like to share with the entire group. You also can use either of those tools to direct message either me or my colleague, Christy Pagnuti, who many of you will also recognize. We're both here to help you troubleshoot anything that needs troubleshooting as we go. So just to introduce myself, my name is Michelle Thompson. I'm OJEN's Director of Capacity Building and Engagement, and I am helping Christy Pagnuti, who is the lead project manager on the Summer Law Institute. And before we get going too much into our content for today, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are here in Toronto, gathered upon the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Huron nations. And we're mindful always of the role that education can play in both the abuses of the state and in contemporary struggles for liberation and equality. And in making this acknowledgement, we recall as well that Toronto remains home to a very large and diverse Indigenous population. And we also know that not everyone in this call is calling in from Toronto, where I am based. So we want to encourage everybody to take a moment to learn about and acknowledge the traditional stewards of the places where you work and live. Okay, so I'm going to proceed through my PowerPoint. So this is just a little overview of what we're going to talk about. So the branching term that we use for all of our services for teachers is courtrooms and classrooms. And we have, as you can see, a pretty large number of items that come under that heading. OJEN, if you're not familiar with us, we are a not-for-profit organization that works across the whole of Ontario. Our home office is based in Toronto, but we actually serve the entire province. Our job is to foster public understanding of the justice system, and we do that mainly through developing resources that educators like you or youth workers or community organizers can use to teach and learn about law, and through training. So these sorts of professional development events for teachers and also sometimes for community workers who work with youth who may be engaging with the law in different ways. We encourage dialogue between justice sector professionals, which is sort of our term of art for lawyers, paralegals, judges, everyone working in the legal system, and the public. A large part of what we do is developing, coordinating, and delivering justice education programs to students and others. So a lot of that work is in school, but a lot of it also happens in community where we might meet with a particular group of youth who have particular common legal and social vulnerabilities as a result of their socioeconomic status. And our ultimate goal is to build legal capability in youth. And if you haven't heard this very OJEN term before, legal capability refers to the measure of how much a person can actually do in the fullness of their circumstances to advance their own interests and protect their own interests through the law. So to have good legal capability, people need a combination of a couple of things. They need knowledge, not just a little bit about how the law works, but also about the system and where to go to get help with it. They need a range of skills, things like being able to communicate their experience, do chronological sequencing and legal reasoning, and prepare for legal processes. And they need some level of confidence in both themselves and the justice system, some level of belief that it is worth it to try to advance their rights using the tools that are available. So that's sort of some of the larger approach that we bring to our development of resources. So the first big thing that I want to take you through are some of the resources that we have created for classroom use. So I'm going to show you on the website how to find stuff, and we'll look at a couple of the different types. But the first thing to know is we have over 200 curriculum-linked classroom resources available for free in English and French on our website. You can access them at any time. They're on a huge range of issues. And we have, even if you're not teaching law, we have law-related classroom resources that are well-suited for grade 10 civics, for family studies classes, for business classes. We've had some careers classes pick up our stuff. And we have a small number of programs that are actually aimed at the elementary level. So it's a pretty big range. Now I'm gonna click over to the website here. Hopefully that share screen has gone smoothly. So if you haven't been here before, this is the OJEN website, ojen.ca. And in looking for classroom resources, OJEN classroom resources. This part is easy. Everything we create is co-drafted by legal experts and educators. It's reviewed by students and tested in classrooms. So we're trying to guarantee a really good balance of being really legally accurate and rigorous and being really accessible in the classroom. So the first thing I want to show you, this is a search function where you can pull up all of our different resources that are meant for classroom use. The thing I want to highlight first is we tend to organize our resources into a couple of different types, and it can be really helpful to know what just a few of those are. So I'm going to click on resource type, which gives me this drop down. We have case summaries. Obviously, that'll give you, pretty accessible summaries of a lot of really key cases. A lot of this is, related to charter law or foundational things about the rule of law. We have some for ESL students, mock trials and hearings we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I want to highlight a couple that are a little less obvious at first. So one of the really useful things that we offer that gets used a lot, we call in brief resources. These are focused explanations of really core legal concepts. So if you're teaching law for the first time, this is a great place to begin. I've just pulled up the in brief resources, and you can see there are things like the process of making a law, an introduction to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And typically these will be a very short primer in a handout form that you can distribute you know, kind of a 1 or 2 session lesson plan for you with some activities and answers. Rule of law, common and civil law, Canadian Constitution. You can see these are really those super fundamental building blocks. Also want to show you something called legal reasoning tools. So this is a small series that we launched a little while ago that's about how to draft and work with actual legal documents. So if you're doing something with your class where you want them looking at court processes, this can be really useful. So for example, we have how to prepare a factum. We'll talk in a little bit about the Charter Challenge program that OJEN has, but this is something that talks through how to actually draft examples of these very technical legal documents. Your students can do it. How to write a case brief can be really helpful. This is a great assignment for students, you know, learning to go through a case and write a case brief. Legal citation. So those are some of those tools. We also have this series called In Focus. And so these are similar length and scope to the in briefs, but rather than being about really fundamental legal concepts, these ones focus on different topical sort of current event style issues, but they seek to give a really well-founded background in what the legal issues are and how to talk about them with your students. So for example, we have one on the Idle No More movement. You may remember from a couple of years ago, the James Forcillo verdict was a really large topic of conversation. This was the case where James Forcillo was a police officer who shot and killed Sammy Yatin, who was 18 years old, and there was a very complex verdict about in what ways he was liable for that. We have ones on the Free Lulu campaign and so on. And we'll probably continue to release these. So besides resource type, you can also focus by what area of law you're looking for. You can see we have a pretty extensive list here. And if you want, by subject area. So the subject area is like, what class are you teaching? What area are you working in? One thing to know about how this filter system works is that when you add multiple selections, they're additional, not subsequent filtering. So for example, if I put in resource type in brief and area of law housing, for example, I'll get everything that's an in brief and everything that's housing, and not just everything that is an in brief about housing. Does that make sense? So it sometimes can be helpful to start with one thing at a time.
Michelle, can I jump in for 1 second?
Please.
Yeah, so I imagine most of you are probably in the same situation I have been in and am in currently, where I don't have an up-to-date class set of any kind of law textbook of any kind. In fact, the textbooks that I have access to are from when I was in high school, so it's dated. So what I find really useful about these resources is they are more topical, they're much more current, and so you have sort of accessible to you really kind of an online textbook that you can utilize. Like we don't have any texts, we utilize the OJEN resources in terms of our classroom materials. And even if there aren't necessarily something on the topic you want to, the structure of like the in briefs, for example, is laid out so clearly, like it becomes a template for you to use for your own issues that you want to explore with your classroom. So what's really nice about the OJEN resources, I think Michelle mentioned, is that they are really geared towards use in classrooms. And so as a teacher, I think you can definitely see all that, like it may not be your particular lesson plan framework, but it's very clearly thought out in terms of how to deliver for a classroom, that you could easily port that over into a new topic and break it down in a way that students can really understand and manage the information.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Lewis. Yeah, we try really hard to make sure that any of our resources is going to have a little bit of scene setting in terms of the information that you need and also that your students need, and then also has a very practical application activity part of that all packaged together. So let me just show you how it works by searching the area of law. I'm going to pull up, you can see how many different options we have here, including things like legal process, business law, things that you may not even have thought of right out the gate. I'm going to pull up, for example, housing and real estate law. Housing is an area that is really useful to talk about with a lot of students, because I think some of the issues in it are very accessible for young people, about security of housing and cost and relationships between renters and landlords and all that. So you can see if we filter by housing and real estate law, we're going to get We have a landlord and tenant board mock hearing scenario. So this is like a mock trial, but it's all around housing issues, and it's based on the LTB, the landlord and tenant board. We have some support. We have this big resource called A Foot in the Door. We have a couple of resources of this size that they're quite large. I think this one is something like 70 pages, but they're broken down into topical modules. So for example, if you wanted, one of the modules in this resource is about human rights and housing. So if you were teaching either about the Human Rights Code in Ontario or about housing law, you could just pull that one chapter out of this resource, use what's in that, even if you're not going to go down the rabbit hole of real estate law and some of the other stuff that's in there. At the same time, there's really useful materials in this for like conducting a mock negotiation, which can be useful in business classes or careers or a whole bunch of other contexts. We're pulling up the Access to Justice game, which is a great online game that we have that's about looking at the legal system as a whole. And one of the scenarios we use there is about housing law. So that's a great extension activity if you've been talking about housing law and want something to sort of add on and build towards. And we have some Steps to Justice workshops. These are ones that sort of try to introduce an area of law using this website called Steps to Justice that was created by our sister public legal education organization called Community Legal Education Ontario. It's a really great lawyer written, 8th grade reading level, incredibly accessible and up to date legal information website. And so this is a workshop that uses that website to get students to do some legal research about housing law. So, you've got like a good little slice here of a couple of different directions you could go with a housing law unit if you wanted to. On that note, I want to talk a little bit about our mock trial and hearing resources. These are some of the most commonly used OJEN resources for classrooms. I think a lot of high school law classes at this point do a mock trial or a hearing. And I think at this point, OJEN has something, it's more than 12, less than 20, I'm going to say, different mock hearing scenarios and packages. So, there's ones on everything from bail to Indigenous sentencing processes to the Youth Criminal Justice Act to family law mediation processes. There's a huge range of these, including a ton that are just, different elements of criminal law. So it can really be worth poking through these. But I want to show you a little bit about how the format of the mock trial resource works, because I think sometimes when you pop it open for the first time, it's a bit intimidating, but it makes sense once you see it. So all of our mock trial packages have a couple of packages built into them. One is the scenario, and that includes roles for students. So this is one that you would print out and give to all of your students. It has all the basic facts, and it has information for a number of the different roles in a mock trial. And I'm going to show you that in a second. There's also a role preparation package, which explains in every different case what are the different roles that will be active in this mock trial. So, if you have a landlord tenant board one, you will probably have a role for the renter, the landlord, maybe some witnesses, a lawyer for each of those two parties. And this will give context for what sort of the rules are that govern all those different roles. And then if you are having someone come in, like a legal professional, to help with coaching, which is something we can help arrange, this is something good to give them, the Justice Sector Volunteer Package, to get them all up to date on what are the legal issues in this case, what are we talking about, what are we doing. So I just want to pop open that big first comprehensive package to show you a little bit about what it looks like. So this one is, as I said, about residential tenancy law. And you can see this outlines the contents of all of the different packages. So in general, the blue is color coded to be the scenario one, role prep is green, and the Justice Sector Volunteer Package is orange down here. You can see the table of contents. So in the scenario package, in every case, not just this one, You're going to have a list of all the different participants or roles, an overview of the fact scenario. So you can treat these as agreed upon facts, an overview and guide to the relevant law that are sort of the core legal issues that your students are going to be negotiating through this mock hearing. Some background information for different witnesses. You know, as you're casting witnesses, we have information about what each witness saw and what they think and their relationships. We really have characters developed for all of these roles. And information for whoever's going to be the adjudicator. That can be you as a teacher, or it can be a student, or it can be a lawyer who you invite into your class. Any of these are fine. The principal sometimes will come in and be the adjudicator. And we have, if there's any, you know, concrete evidence that's being submitted, it'll be in here in exhibits. And you have at the bottom a sample sequence of how to run the actual mock hearing itself. So typically, I think most people would take, what do you think, Lewis? Would you spend like a week of class on a mock trial? How much class time would you allot?
It depends. And I think when I first started, we'd all be doing the same trial and we take that week. It also like non-semester to semester, depending on where you find yourself that way. But now we have up to like 5 different trials happening at any one time. So sometimes we try to frame it around like these core lessons on the like relevant law to that case, and then build the time around that as well. So and then we have it staggered. So like one trial will happen, another trial will happen. So it's not necessarily like a block of like clear amount of time. It depends on how you're running it. But if it's one where everyone's doing it together, I could see a week and a half being everything is being worked on together. But if you're going for multiple ones, you might stagger it. So it might actually end up taking like a month with other things in between as well, that
Sure.
Everyone kind of gets through things.
So would you, because this is one thing I was going to ask you about. So typically in all of our mock hearings, you'll have basically the complainant or victim or whatever, you'll have basically the defendant or respondent or whatever, depending on whether it's civil or criminal or what. So those are 2 roles. Typically, each side will have 2 witnesses. So that's 3 on each team. Typically, there's a role for a lawyer on each side, which I know many people break that role up into multiple because it can be quite large. So can you say a little bit about, you know, that's only 8 roles in theory. Can you say a bit about how you engage the whole class in this?
Yeah, so like you were saying, there might be different roles where, you know, a lawyer will be doing opening, someone else would be doing closing, and someone else would be examining or cross-examining different witnesses. So that starts to build up the roles. If there's a judge, or in this case, sort of board member, that we're more flexible with, like, is it 1, is it 2, is it 3? And we talk about why those numbers might work. We try to always have an odd number so we don't end up with a tie at any kind of decision. And then I know something we've started doing with the international criminal mock trial, they have the role of UN observer or journalist. And so we have those that we introduce into some of even like the criminal mock trials, where we have a journalist who's covering it. And so after every trial part, so for example, we won't necessarily do a trial on a whole class. We'll do the prosecution's case one day, and then the journalist is tasked with doing a report for the class that day, like summarizing what happened in the case. And then for the UN observer's role, for other types of legal cases, we'll have someone that's then making a presentation on one of the social or political issues around that case, and they'll present it to the class at the end as sort of like findings following the case. So that will, like, you can really, like with the mock trial, the criminal one, we have the whole class doing the whole trial. So that can be upwards of like 25 kids. And so you need those multiple roles then to support that.
Right. Got it. Yeah, that's really helpful. I know also we have a resource about juries in Ontario at this point. I know something that some teachers have done is basically treat all of the students who are not otherwise indisposed as jurors. And so there are some activities in there for them to do as your other students who have sort of named roles are, you know, getting familiar with their scenarios or preparing their opening statements and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, when we've done Charter Challenge, for example, we have one team presenting or like doing the actual case, another team that's not presenting is just watching, and another team that's doing a different case are the judges for that case. So we have like kind of a cycle through that way to support that.
Got it. Yeah, that's completely great. So I'm just scrolling down just so you can see a bit of this package. In terms of knowing where you are in this package, we have sort of the sections laid out. on this side on the left. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, hopefully you can. So as you can see here, we have a set of facts that we can treat these as agreed. It'll lay out in with all the details that you need. We have a record of what's been submitted. This page, you can see we have the relevant law and process. So, you know, issue 1 is how a landlord may terminate a tenancy for non-payment of rent. We'll have the overview, some steps, you know, where to go and look for more. So all of that is really laid out, and you can, this is parsed in a way where you can just give this information to students as well as using it to prep yourself. We have the issues identified specifically. And so, you know, we help a little bit with scaffolding students by giving them some of the core issues, but how they pick up those questions and argue them is really up to them. There's a lot of flexibility in all of these cases. They're balanced such that there's plenty for both sides to argue about. Just scrolling down here, this is still the law. So this is what a character preparation scenario page looks like. So this is the character page for the landlord in this case. It'll give you a little background, some tips on how to prepare for being a good witness. And it has your version of what happens. So different characters in this will have slightly different versions or perspectives on the case. And that's so that your students in examination in chief and in cross-examination really have something to dig in with different parties. So, and yeah, questions to think about when you're preparing. So there will be one of these for all of the main characters. You can assign them to students however you want. There will also be some information further on about how to prepare as lawyers. Yeah, so this is the exhibits that are being submitted in this case. We have a reproduction of the actual documents that would be used in a real case. And then if you flip over to the role preparation package, which you can see here, I'm not going to pop this open right now just for the sake of time, but this has all the information about, you know, the sequence of an actual hearing, how to prepare an opening statement, how to prepare questions for examination in chief or cross-examination, how to prepare closing statements, all that kind of stuff, all that technical role-based stuff you can find in here. So there are 2 other tools that can be useful, I think, if you're doing mock hearings, especially for the first time. One is this resource called Making a Case, the mock hearing toolkit. This OJEN put together a huge number of years ago. It's quite long, but if there are particular elements of running a mock hearing that you're like, I don't really know how to handle this part, this document can be really useful to you. And the other thing, particularly if you haven't done this before, or if you want something you can show directly to your students to help with supporting them along this journey, we have this video resource. You can find it by going resources, video resources, mock trial step by step. We've actually made this short series of videos that really go step by step in how to do every element of a mock trial. So opening proceedings, arraignment and plea, you can have court clerks, opening statements. This includes both some information and guidance from a criminal lawyer. This is John Adair, who did these videos for us, and also an example of a student doing that thing. So you are welcome to share this directly with your class to help people prepare for their roles, or to just use it as a resource for yourself. Okay. So on that note, the next big thing that that's our main overview of our classroom resources. Again, to reiterate, all of this can be found through this core classroom resource search engine that we have. All of it is always free and available to you. If you ever have questions about any of this, including if it's like, I want to teach something about this and I just can't find what I'm looking for, do you have anything? Can you suggest anything? You are always welcome to email us at info@ojen.ca, which is our main organizational intake, and that'll get passed along to someone from our department that works on these resources who can give some advice and some help. Moving on to some of the services that we provide for teachers. Remember I said our whole suite of services is called Courtrooms and Classrooms. One of the first things that OJEN set up when we were formed as a nonprofit was to arrange easy ways for teachers to book field trips to courthouses for visits and speakers to come into classrooms for classroom visits. So I just want to show you briefly how to do both of those things and talk about them a bit. So you can find most of our sort of services that we offer under our work and in the classroom. So first of all, booking a courthouse visit. Now, obviously, right now, it's not really safe to be doing courthouse visits. And so we have this update. Most of the courts are not currently taking field trips because they're trying to minimize how many people are present in the courthouse at any given time, which probably makes sense. But in general, the courts in Canada are open. Taking your students to go observe court is absolutely something you can do. And in times when it's safe to do so, this is a page you would visit, and we have sort of a setup form where you identify where your school is. You know, we help identify what the nearest courthouses are. You give us some sense of when you'd like to come, ideally, you know, a couple weeks in advance and not a couple days in advance, how many students you want to bring and all that. And on our end, all of that information gets collated and sent to a designated courthouse person at the courthouse that you have identified, who sort of will take a look at what's going on that day, will reach out to you, will know that your class is coming. And the advantage of that is that it's really good for courts to know when you're going to be bringing class. You don't have to do it this way, but it is genuinely really helpful. One of the things that happens at most courthouses is that the person who is our contact there will arrange to meet your class when they arrive. Often they'll be able to tell you a little bit about what's going on in different rooms that day. So this can be advantageous because, you know, they may be able to give some direction in terms of there's bail hearings going on in this one, so it'll be pretty fast moving and there's some interesting stuff to see, or this one is all procedural matters, it's probably going to be boring. The other thing that is a bit helpful is if there's anything highly sensitive going on that day, for example, pretty difficult, you know, sexual assault of a minor cases where, you know, there may be some sensitivities required around bringing a lot of young spectators into the space. They can just help give you the heads up so that you know how to manage that with your own group. Lots of them also will do things like arrange for a judge to come and talk to your class during break time. So there's some great upsides, and you can do that all just through our website. The flip side of this is you can also request a legal speaker to come talk to your class. This is a huge amount of what we do, is just receiving requests from teachers for a speaker who can talk about a particular, you know, legal issue in current events, or a particular area of law, or careers in law. We really have a good and really solid large network of lawyers, judges, paralegals, court workers, whatever you want, who love speaking to students and are really, really happy to do it. So we have a form you can use to request this. Again, ideally, we would love to have at least 3 to 4 weeks notice, you know. So we just need generally your school information, a bit about your location, a bit of context about your students and what you're looking for, civil lawyer, criminal, paralegal, other. We'll ask you to give us maybe 2 options for dates, the time of your class, and in this field, subject matter of the classroom visits. You can tell us whatever you want. I mean, we don't, depending on how granular your search is, you know, we'll do our best to meet it, or at least get someone who's in that ballpark for you. But feel free to really tell us what you're looking for. We have a pretty large network and we can make a lot of things happen. And then we just need the email address. So when you send this request, it's received by someone on staff who will then go try to find you a good match of a lawyer who is in your area and can attend your class if it's going to be in person, or otherwise who's available at the time and can call in or join you in Google Classroom if it's going to be remote. Lewis, have you used this or the courthouse visit form?
I haven't, no.
Okay, no problem. I assure you they work well. So that's that. So, you know, if you want to request a coach or an adjudicator for a mock hearing, if you want someone to come in and just do an introduction to an area of law, if you want someone to come and speak about an issue that students are asking about, whether that's, you know, environmental law or something that you wouldn't otherwise have space for necessarily in the curriculum, this can be a really great way to make that happen. Okay, and the last big area second last big area that I want to show you is what we call annual or semi-annual programs. So they're a little different than our classroom resources, which you can pick up and do on your own schedule. These are things that we organize centrally on a set schedule from the OJEN office. So some of them happen annually and some of them happen once per semester. So in annual events and programs here, the first one I want to talk about is what we call the OOMCT, which is the OBA OJEN competitive mock trials. So some of you may have heard of this. This is a province-wide mock trial competition that we do in partnership with the Ontario Bar Association, which is the OBA. They are competitive tournaments. So we have tournaments all over Ontario. Most regions have one that's active. They happen in, I believe, March to April and May, if I recall correctly. So certainly your second semester, but lots of people will treat this as a, oh, I see. I'm just seeing the note about summer school. Thank you for that. We can make sure that we're following up on that. So these are centrally located tournaments. I think most teachers treat participation in a mock trial team for this as sort of an extracurricular, because there are rules about how many students you can send as part of the team from your school. I think it's 6 or 8. All the rules are here. But there are really, really fun, enhanced opportunity to really dig into some legal technicalities for students who are keen to do so. So in here, you can find, you know, local tournaments by region. You can look through all of them. You can find key dates for the 2021 school year. Charter Challenge is another big one that has been going for a really long time at OJEN. So this one happens once per semester. So regardless of when you're teaching law, this is available to you. So this is an appellate level mock hearing. And to our knowledge, it's the only one in Ontario. So rather than being about the trial, this one is about arguing legal issues at that higher level of when cases are going through appeals court. So instead of having, you know, facts that you're tussling over, in this case, you are writing appellate level facta, so factums, for a case that has already been heard by a lower court and in the fiction of this mock hearing is coming before the Court of Appeal. So the way this works is students write facta, and submit them to us. This is a province-wide competition, and so they are reviewed by usually clerks at the Court of Appeal or some other courts, who will choose the strongest facta from either side. So you can write as the appellate or the respondent, and the top teams from each are actually invited, if they can make it, to argue their facta live at the Court of Appeal in Toronto. So we will have often a panel of real judges or real active court clerks who are working in the appellate courts there to adjudicate and to judge and to debrief a little bit with students afterwards. Lewis, you've been active in Charter Challenge, haven't you?
Yeah, we've done it the last 4 years or so. And we've been able to be in the finalists for the last couple of years as well.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's been different experience online than it has been in person. But I find this one, the criminal mock trial is really great because the kids really enjoy a criminal case, and you'll probably find that in your classes, and they like talking about those types of things. This one is really fascinating because there's a lot of sort of underlying philosophical, political, social issues that you get to work with them over a series of months, and they kind of develop their ideas around it. on top of picking like whether they're respondent or appellant. And often students pick the side they don't agree with personally because they want to sort of like work through the law that way and not take for granted certain things. So this one's really like I found their growth in the classroom because we do these like we do previous cases as classroom activities, and then along with doing our law club, doing the actual competition, their growth as people during this process is sort of like it's kind of the neatest thing about teaching law is like seeing those light bulbs kind of turn on, and topics like even the vaccination one this year, some students like they really kind of were put in like some difficult circumstances in terms of trying to think about some of these issues and what it means, and thinking about other issues around like police searches, and it's just been really really cool to kind of see the type of learning they do in something like this as a program.
That's great. Just for context, so we release a different charter challenge scenario every semester. So you're not going to have the same one every year. And so everyone will be working on one that every semester is curated based on, you know, something that's in the news or something that is actually making its way through the courts, something that will give you a lot to talk about and to dig into in the ways that Lewis was alluding to. And some people will do this with their entire class. I know, Lewis, you do it with Law Club and do a different one with your full class, but you know, some people will have everyone in the class dig in and write facta, and then they'll choose the top 1 or 2 from their class to submit to the provincial competitions. There's lots of different ways to work with this. Okay, that's charter challenge, and they're all charter issues, obviously. So they all tend to involve some level of constitutional rights-based argument as well, which is just cool for students to do. Next up, the Twitter Moot. This has been a pretty recent program that we've launched. It actually was originated by our Hamilton local committee, which is a group of teachers and lawyers and judges working in Hamilton to administer justice education programs in their region. But the Twitter Moot now happens every semester. It's an online debate using Twitter. So we'll give a common set of facts or a common question, and we have classes register in advance. We want to know what the handles are that we should track. But essentially, there's a set day when students go online using those Twitter accounts and engage with each other directly. And we have had great success with this. We have had, with pretty much no exception, students really getting into it, being very respectful, really engaging each other in debate. And we've had some fun instances where legal professionals who aren't affiliated with the Twitter Moot will end up hopping in and agreeing with points or adding more context or otherwise engaging as well. And so this has been something really fun as well, that is sort of, they're always legal issues, but with a heavy social context component. So there are always things that are a little bit more accessible and that students can still participate in, even without an incredibly advanced understanding of the law around those areas. So again, for students to participate, we just need you to let us know in advance that they're going to be, and then we will watch your accounts and retweet stuff to the main OJEN account, and you're off to the races. So we also offer the poster challenge, which is aimed at elementary students. This is one where elementary students make a poster saying what they value about the charter, and there are regional competitions and the winners get posted in local courthouses. It's really, really fun. I know most of you guys are high school teachers, so I'll skip over that one for now. In non-COVID times, we have a number of events as well that are really about careers in law and are focused on, particular historically excluded demographics. So we've historically had events about women in law, LGBTQ people in law. Sisters in Law is for young Black women. Braiding Diversity into Justice is for young people of color, a lot of whom tend to be women or gender diverse or otherwise sort of marginalized from the profession. But the one other big thing that I want to show you guys was the student bursary program. So if you are teaching grade 12, if you have any students who are going into any sort of post-secondary program, that engages with the law. So we have this pretty loosely defined. I think a lot of the social sciences probably qualify. If they are even contemplating a career in law, they can apply into these bursary programs, and we have 7 awards of $1,000. Oh, we have a number of awards of $1,000. I will say also, we have a lot of applicants, but I don't think we have an incredible amount of applicants for an award of $1,000. So it's worth mentioning to your students that I know some of these awards and scholarships can really feel like a long shot. These ones are worth applying for. So do keep this in mind. The process opens in March and generally closes in late May. So around the time that students are all only thinking about their colleges and universities that are coming anyway. And it can be really helpful for people going into their first year. We all know that school is expensive. So that's there as well. The very last thing that I wanted to mention as one of our core services for teachers is our professional development offerings. And of course, I know you know a little bit about those already, considering you're at one at this exact moment, but I wanted to just run through what we actually offer. So you can find most of this under the training section of our website in the for teachers section. So the first thing I'll show you is law institutes. So we run these all over the province. We try to have them in different regions so that we can reach teachers in different areas. We've had ones historically in Thunder Bay or in Kingston, in Ottawa, I think in London. So, we try to go to wherever we can get this set up. And they're generally a day-long professional development event where we'll have, multiple sessions with different speakers on, relevant legal topics, often a little bit about what's new from OJEN in terms of our resources. And we generally try to build some community and do some offerings in the space where you are. The largest and our flagship annual event is the Summer Law Institute, of which this is one session. Typically that happens over 2 days at the end of August in Toronto, in this beautiful room you can see here, Convocation Hall in Osgoode Hall in Toronto. And this is sort of a big hub of our PD every year. We also very frequently will do shorter spots at PD days, events that are organized by teachers unions or curriculum committees, or a group like OHASTA or local boards. Anyone is welcome to request PD events for us, and we will put together sort of as long or as short of a program as you need for the time you have available. We'll find the people, we'll make all of that happen. And finally, particularly during COVID, but we'll probably continue this afterwards, we have at this point a good number of webinars available online. In addition to the content of the law institutes that have been online over the last year, we also do something like every month or two, we have a PD webinar for teachers. You can find information on ones that are upcoming here. You can also find the archive here, which includes recordings of last year's Summer Law Institute presentations. We had this incredible session about a curriculum resource developed by the people working the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It's all about context for working with that in the classroom. We have a great session about environmental law and the constitutional challenge to Ontario's action on climate change that's being brought by a group of youth ranging in age from, I think, 14 to 17. We had counsel for that come on and talk to us about that. We had sessions on COVID and some interesting issues like fertility law that maybe won't make their way into your classroom, but are still interesting to learn about. So please feel free to check that out at any time. You can also visit us at our YouTube channel, where we post all of this content as well. So you can see we have the mock trial step-by-step up here. It's organized into playlists. And so last year's Summer Law Institute, we have some training for facilitators. We have all kinds of stuff. So we're trying our best to make all of this really accessible and available to you at all times. We also are in the process of launching a subscribable audio feed in like a podcast format of all of our PD events, so that if you, rather than watching webinars, would rather listen while you're cooking dinner or in transit or whatever, that's going to be available really shortly. And on that note, share here. Here we go. I just wanted to quickly point you all to the program we have in place for the rest of the Summer Law Institute. So as you can see, we have something happening pretty much every day between now and next Thursday. And I particularly wanted to point out that next Tuesday, we are having this session, which we do every year, on OJEN's new resources. So in that one, we'll be highlighting things that we've produced over the last year or so, new things we can offer, and some things that may be particularly relevant for you coming into the weird school year that we're about to begin. So if there's anything else on this list that looks interesting to you or appealing, there's lots of good content there from lots of great legal experts, including Justice for Children and Youth, the Black Legal Action Center, stuff about paralegal careers. We have Sonia Lawrence, who's a wonderful legal academic from Osgoode Hall, doing our top 5 significant cases of the past year. And particularly, we wanted to invite everyone here as well to join us on August 26th at 5 p.m. to celebrate Kim Wilson, who's the recipient of our 2021 Huck's Kitely Exemplary Justice Educator Award. Kim is a very recently retired teacher who has been an incredible advocate for legal education. And it's just nice to get together and celebrate someone who's done such great work over such a long time. For that one, you can RSVP just by emailing the address at the bottom of the screen there. We'd be happy to see any of you. Louis, do you have any last thoughts about this? I mean, if anyone has questions, we're happy to receive them from Q&A or through chat. What's on your mind?
I guess I'll say that, like, in the last, I've been teaching now for 14 years, I think, and the students coming into law class feel very different than they did at the very beginning, or even when I was in law class in high school. They're coming in with like pretty deep questions, and I think having access to some of these resources, like even some of the books I've gotten, like the Constitutional Law series that we get at the end of the SLI, have been so useful in terms of answering questions around Section 7, like questions on the charter, like just things like that, where they're not coming in sort of like, what is law? They're coming in, why isn't the law this way, or why is the world this way? So being able to sort of have access to these things and being ready to teach them, because I remember even like law used to be part of business departments for a long time, and it had a very different approach than now being part of Canada World Studies. So just, this is like, I can't emphasize enough, like your students probably are excited to take this course, whether it's a new course or like you're new to the course, and being able to sort of meet them where they are is really, really, really beneficial, and like the class will be fantastic.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, and the best way to keep on top of some of this stuff, including what's new, deadlines that are coming up, is just to subscribe to our newsflash, which the link is on the website at the bottom of the screen. Our teacher newsflash is sort of our main email communication vehicle, where we send out updates of what we have. If we have upcoming webinars on current topics, we'll let you know. As things are changing with the situation around courthouse visits, we'll be sending out updates that way. So that's really the best way to keep on top of all of this stuff. Okay, well, I don't see any questions in the chat, which is entirely fine. So before we exit, I just want to say a thank you again to Louis for coming and chatting about some of how you've used this stuff in your class. I think it's so helpful for me to hear how it is actually playing out in person, and I'm sure that's true of the audience as well. Thank you for the information about the YouTube channel. Absolutely, yeah. So we have that. You can just search for OJEN on YouTube, and you'll find us. I also just wanted to say thank you to the Law Foundation of Ontario. This entire professional development series is only available and only free to teachers because of the generous granting support of the LFO. And also I want to acknowledge the many individual donors who have given to OJEN and share our vision of a highly legally capable young adult population. Just getting a couple more comments coming in. Yeah, you're so welcome, Catherine. Thank you for being here. All right, on that note, I think we might as well let people go. Thank you so much, Louis.
Not a problem. Thank you.
I hope we'll see everyone else at some of the other Summer Law Institute sessions. Take care.